My name is Rachel. For most of my adult life, I believed in the kind of love that endures hardship. I believed in partnership, sacrifice, and building a future through trust. When I met Daniel, I thought I had found that kind of love. He was charming in a quiet way, not loud or overbearing, but calm, observant, and always saying the right things. He would hold the door for me, send flowers just because, and he once told me, "I want to be the man who makes your life easier, not harder." I remember feeling lucky. I was 31 at the time, with a stable job at a nonprofit and a small but peaceful apartment just outside of Denver. I had never been someone who needed flash or status. I valued emotional safety, kindness, and consistency. Daniel offered all of that, or at least it appeared so. We got married within a year of meeting. Looking back, that was too fast. But at the time, it felt like certainty. He was in real estate, independent, successful, and confident. He made more money than I did, and sometimes I would hear him joke about it at parties. "Rachel saves the world, I pay the mortgage," he would say with a grin. People laughed. I laughed too, even though something about it unsettled me. But I told myself it was harmless. The first year of marriage was smooth, on the surface. He traveled a lot for work, which meant I spent a good amount of time alone. At first, I appreciated the space. I liked having quiet evenings to read, to write, to breathe, but then came the criticisms. Soft at first, dismissive. "You always overthink things. You are too sensitive. Why do you always take things so personally?" It started to feel like any emotional response I had, any concern, any confusion, was a flaw. And the more I tried to understand what I was doing wrong, the more confused I became. It was like I was walking through fog. I started apologizing for things I had not even done. He would forget something, and somehow I would end up saying sorry. Still, I kept hoping things would settle, that we were just adjusting, that I was being too emotional, like he said, that maybe I just needed to be more supportive. He always said that, "Be on my team, Rachel." So I tried harder. I stopped questioning him when he came home late. I stayed quiet when his phone buzzed in the middle of the night. I smiled at dinners with his colleagues when he interrupted me or told stories that made me seem small. I told myself this was normal, that no relationship is perfect, but there was one night I will never forget. It was just after our 3rd anniversary. We were having dinner at home, salmon, white wine, candles. He was in a good mood, relaxed. That always made me relax too. I was clearing the table when I knocked his phone off the counter. It was not locked. I picked it up and saw a text light up the screen. It read, "You really going to leave her before the end of the year, or just string her along again?" My hand went cold. I stood there, staring at the message, while my breath caught in my throat. I should have confronted him right then. I should have asked, but instead, I placed the phone face down and kept cleaning. That night, I lay next to him in bed, staring at the ceiling, hearing his steady breath while my mind raced. Something inside me cracked. Not anger, not yet, but something deeper, the slow death of denial. That was the first time I thought, he is not who I thought he was. What I discovered that day never left me. I tried to shake it off, to believe I had misunderstood, but deep down, something inside me had shifted. I stopped feeling safe in my own life. I stopped feeling at home in my own home. Daniel never mentioned that message. He went on like everything was normal. Breakfast as usual, work trips, meetings with his real estate clients, phone always flipped face down. And I went on too because I did not know what else to do. I kept telling myself it was a joke, or maybe I misread it. Maybe it was about someone else. Maybe he was trying to protect me. I reached for every excuse I could because the truth would have hurt too much. I began paying closer attention. I noticed that his compliments turned into subtle digs. "You looked great when we first met. You are smart, but you get emotional so fast." I laughed it off at first, the way I had always done, but each time it chipped away at something. And the more I pulled back, the more he pressed forward with these jokes that were not jokes. I remember one dinner with his friends, mostly other real estate agents and their wives. I had been quiet most of the night, just observing, tired from a long day. At one point, someone asked how we met, and I smiled, ready to share that story. But Daniel cut in, laughing. "She chased me down after one open house. Could not resist. Me." It was not true. At all. I laughed along with everyone else. But something in me froze. He had taken something sacred, the real, tender way we fell for each other, and turned it into a punchline. That was the first time I realized. He liked being the one in control of the story. The power dynamic between us had always been off. I just had not seen it. He earned more, so we used his name for most things. The mortgage, the cars, even the home we moved into 2 years into our marriage, a beautiful, modern house in a quiet suburb outside Denver, was legally his. He said it was easier for taxes. I believed him. When my father passed away unexpectedly, I inherited a small sum. Nothing extravagant, but enough to give me a sense of stability. Maybe start a savings account, invest in myself. Daniel encouraged me to put it into renovating the house. "It will be good for both of us," he said. "Think long term. We are building a future." So I did. I poured every last cent into a kitchen remodel and landscaping. I told myself it was a joint investment, even though the deed never had my name. I had asked once, gently, if we bus could change that. He laughed, not cruelly, just casually. "Why? Are you planning to leave me?" I had smiled. "Of course not." "Well, then what does it matter?" he said. That conversation haunted me more than I realized. But back then, I was still convincing myself that everything would be okay if I just tried harder. There were other things. Quiet exclusions. His family never truly accepted me. His mother, especially, always had this tight-lipped smile around me, like she was doing me a favor by pretending to like me. She once told me, "Daniel has always gone for women who need him. That is his weakness." I stood there, blinking, unsure whether it was an insult or just her way of reminding me who she thought he was. Daniel never defended me. If anything, he added to the narrative. At family dinners, he would say things like, "Rachel means well. She just has strong opinions." Or worse, "She grew up different than we did." I started feeling like a guest in my own life. I tiptoed around his moods, apologized before he even got angry, questioned every instinct I had. I kept a journal, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. I needed to remind myself what was real. One entry still stands out. I asked him if he was happy. He shrugged, said, "You are stable. That is enough." I do not know what that means. I began to understand that stability was all he needed. From me. I was useful. I made the house run, paid bills on time, hosted his clients, dressed the part. But emotionally, I was just a fixture, something to lean on, not something to love. Then came the final confirmation. It was late one night, and Daniel had fallen asleep on the couch after drinking with a few colleagues. His phone lit up. I had long ago learned not to check it. But this time, something in me just moved. I do not know how else to describe it. It felt less like a choice and more like a surrender to truth. The messages were all there. Months worth of texts with a woman named Kara, someone from his office. She was younger, 29 if her Instagram was to be believed. And every message reeked of emotional intimacy. Things he had not said to me in years. I wish I could wake up next to you every day. She does not see me like you do. I feel alive when I am with you." I stared at the screen, heart pounding, lips trembling, but not crying. Not yet. The crying would come later. What I felt in that moment was worse than sadness. It was clarity. He was cheating on me, and what hurt more than the betrayal itself was that I was not even surprised. I sat there for almost an hour, phone in, hand rereading everything until it etched into me. I memorized dates, names, the rhythm of their conversations. I studied the woman he thought was worth risking everything for. Then I put the phone down, walked quietly to our bedroom, and lay next to him, just like every other night. I said nothing, because I was not ready to lose. Not yet. By the time I finally accepted what was happening, I was already drowning in silence. But something inside me refused to disappear. I had been quiet long enough. I had begged reality to be something it was not. Waited for kindness that never returned, apologized for bruises no one could see, and now I was done reacting. That night, after reading the messages, I lay next to Daniel in the dark. I could hear him snoring softly, like nothing in the world was wrong. I stared at the ceiling and listened, not to him, but to myself. My heartbeat had slowed. The tears that once would have come freely never arrived. I felt a strange stillness take over. I did not leave. I did not scream. I did not confront him. I started planning. The first thing I did was make copies of everything. I waited until he left on his next business trip, 3 days in Phoenix, and I opened his filing cabinet. There were documents I had seen before, and many I had not. Mortgage statements, tax filings, client agreements, investment portfolios. Most were in his name, but I had contributed to so much of it. The house renovations, the home office, the furniture. My name was nowhere. I scanned everything onto a flash drive, labeled it wedding photos, and kept it in my car's glove compartment. I checked our joint bank account, which was not really joint anymore. I had not noticed before, but his income had been quietly rerouted to a separate personal account months ago. He had never mentioned it. Our shared account still received tiny transfers here and there, just enough to cover utilities or groceries. Enough to keep me from asking questions. I opened a new account in my own name that day. I started setting aside money from my nonprofit job. It was not much, but I made it work. I canceled unnecessary subscriptions, cooked at home, and stashed away every extra dollar I could. I opened a new credit card under my maiden name too. Daniel had once helped me by consolidating our finances, which really meant everything was routed through him. I was reversing that. Piece by piece. I also did something I never thought I would. I contacted a lawyer. Her name was Monica, and she came recommended by a colleague at work. I told her everything. The house, the money, the affair, the power imbalance. I expected judgment, maybe even skepticism. But all she said was, "You are not crazy, and you are not alone." She walked me through options. Legal separation, documentation, financial discovery, asset tracing. She explained that although the house was in Daniel's name, my financial contributions could be accounted for in a divorce, especially with records. She told me to keep everything, every text, every receipt, every detail. So I did. Meanwhile, I played the role I always had. I smiled at dinners. I asked him about his day. I packed his bags for trips and kissed him goodbye like nothing had changed. He was convinced I was still under his thumb, that I was too weak, too dependent, too afraid to live without him. And in many ways, he was right. Or had been. But something had shifted. I was no longer reaching for love or approval. I was watching, studying, preparing. He once told me, during a particularly cruel argument, "You would be nothing without me. Do you know that? Nothing. You are just soft. You do not even know how the real world works. I remember staring at him, my voice quiet. Maybe, but I was learning. I learned how to pull our phone records. I learned how to track bank transfers. I learned how to build a paper trail that told the story he wanted to hide. I started journaling again, this time with dates, times, and screenshots. Monica said it could all matter if things went to court, and I wanted to be ready. Emotionally, I began pulling away too. I stopped trying to fix things. I stopped asking for affection, stopped explaining myself when he twisted my words. I let his insults pass like wind through a broken window. I gave him nothing to push against. He began noticing, but he did not know what it meant. He thought I was shutting down, losing interest. That was fine with him. It gave him more freedom to disappear with Kara, to take more trips, to act like the king of the house while I folded laundry and made polite small talk. The more invisible he thought I was, the more power I gained. I started keeping things at work, extra clothes, some cash, copies of my documents, just in case. I changed the passwords on everything I owned and quietly updated my emergency contacts. I even arranged for a friend to house sit when Daniel traveled so I could clean out my files without drawing attention. I was building a version of myself I had not seen in years. Someone steady, strategic, self-protective. I no longer needed his love. I needed freedom. But my moment, the shift from silence to power, came one morning over breakfast. Daniel was sitting at the counter, scrolling through his phone, when he said, "I have been thinking, maybe you should stay with your sister. For a while, you are always tired. You need a break or something." I set my coffee down and looked at him. Calm, unshaken. "No," I said. He looked up, surprised. "What?" I said. "No," I repeated. "This is my home. I am not leaving." He stared at me, confused, like he had just heard a different language. He blinked and laughed a little like I had made a joke, but I kept my gaze steady. My hands were still. My voice had no shake in it. That was the moment I knew. He no longer scared me. I had spent years shrinking, bending, second-guessing, all for a man who saw me as background noise in his own life. But now I was the one watching him, and he had no idea what I had built behind my silence. He went back to his phone, muttering something about how dramatic I was. But I knew better. My time was coming. They sensed something was changing, but not in time. When they finally made their move, I had already laid the groundwork. I did not strike first, but I knew how to end it. It started with the papers. Daniel left them carelessly on the kitchen counter, folded in half and pinned under the weight of his car keys. The top line read, "Petition for dissolution of marriage." My name, typed in all caps, was cold on the page. There was no conversation, no warning, just a stack of legal documents served like leftovers. According to him, I had become uncooperative, emotionally unstable, and financially irresponsible. He requested the house, all primary assets, and claimed I had no substantial income to warrant spousal support. He offered me nothing but a short list of personal items I could remove at a scheduled time. Daniel had filed first, thinking it gave him control. What he did not know was that I had been ready for this long before he put pen to paper. I called Monica within the hour. She did not sound surprised. We expected this. Now we move. The response we filed was precise. Attached were months of documented financial contributions, voice recordings of subtle threats, and detailed logs of emotional abuse. I included copies of emails where Daniel discussed hiding assets and outlined questionable business expenses, many of which overlapped with his weekend trips and unexplained withdrawals. There was one email to Kara that stood out, a message referencing how he just needed her to stay patient until the house was cleared. The house. My home. The one I had painted myself. The one I had helped remodel, furnish, maintain. The one he thought he could sweep from under me without a word. But now, he was exposed still. Daniel did not panic right away. Men like him rarely do, not until they feel the silence shift against them. Instead, he doubled down. He told my friends I had been lying, spinning wild stories about abuse and infidelity. He reached out to my sister, told her I was manipulating the system, said I had mental health issues, and was unstable under pressure. It worked, for a moment. A few people pulled away. Some avoided the topic. Others gave me those soft, condescending smiles as if I were a glass on the edge of a shelf. But I stayed still. I did not fight rumors with more words. I let the truth collect like rain in a basin. Then Daniel tried to freeze the joint account. Monica had warned me. I had already moved my funds. Next, he claimed I had forged financial documents. He tried to bring that to court. But Monica came prepared. She walked into that courtroom like she had already read the ending of the story. She laid out a clear, undeniable timeline, complete with statements, signatures, and traced funds that showed how Daniel had diverted thousands from our shared savings into his personal business account. A business, by the way, registered under his cousin's name to avoid tax liability. We had receipts for that too. Daniel's attorney stumbled. His face, that smug, polished smirk he always wore in meetings or dinners, began to slide. His posture stiffened when the judge asked about financial transparency and intentional misrepresentation. The hearing ended with an interim order that froze any further asset transfers and mandated that Daniel pay temporary spousal support until final division could be decided. I saw the fury behind his eyes that day, the disbelief. He looked at me like I had become someone else. He did not understand how the quiet woman he once ignored had turned into the opponent sitting calmly across the courtroom, watching him unravel. After the hearing, he approached me in the hallway. "This is what you want?" he asked. "To ruin me?" I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said, "No, you did that on your own. I am just not hiding it anymore." Daniel's last play was the house. One morning, I came home from work to find a notice taped to the front door. He was trying to sell it, without my knowledge or consent, claiming he was the sole owner on title. That was true. What he failed to remember was that I had receipts. Years of renovation bills, design consultations, mortgage payments I had, contributed to from my earnings. The email chain where he thanked me for handling the home projects while he was out building his business. And the journal entries, the photos of receipts, the contractor statements with my name as project lead. We filed a lis pendens, a formal notice to block the sale until ownership could be fully evaluated by the court. When the real estate attorney saw our evidence, he withdrew from Daniel's case. The house was taken off the market 2 days later. 3 weeks after that, the final hearing came. I walked into the courtroom with Monica by my side. Daniel sat across from me, quiet for once. Kara was not there. He looked alone, smaller than I remembered. The judge delivered the ruling slowly, carefully. The house would be placed under joint ownership and sold, with proceeds divided equitably based on financial contribution and evidence submitted. After expenses, I would receive 68% of the profit. Daniel would keep his business, but was required to pay back a portion of misappropriated funds and penalties for fraudulent filings. I was also awarded a separate settlement for emotional distress and legal fees. It was quiet when it ended. Daniel did not look at me. He stood, shook his attorney's hand with barely a word, and walked out. I sat there for a moment, staring at the bench. Then I stood and followed Monica to the hallway. She looked at me and smiled. "Just a small one." "You held the line," she said. I nodded. "Yes, I did." The house sold 6 months later. I used the money to buy a small craftsman bungalow 2 towns over. It was nothing like the house I had left. No marble counters or open floor plans. Just warm wood, deep windowsills, and a kitchen. I painted myself. It felt like mine. Daniel, as far as I know, moved in with Kara. I heard through a friend that the relationship did not last. That he tried to start another business, but it stalled. That he blamed the economy, the courts, me. Let him. He was right about one thing once. The day he laughed in my face and said, "You would be nothing without me," he had no idea. When it was finally over, there was no celebration, just silence. The kind of silence that only follows storms. I did not cry. I did not scream. I did not even feel joy. What I felt was weightless, as if something heavy I had carried on my back for years had finally slipped off without a sound. I remember standing in my new kitchen, barefoot on cool tile, pouring my morning coffee, and realizing I could breathe all the way down to my stomach again. No tightness, no waiting for the floor to fall out beneath me. I was not the same woman who once tiptoed around her own home, afraid to say the wrong thing. I was not the woman who used to second-guess herself every time Daniel gave her that quiet, cold stare, the one that made her shrink without even raising his voice. I was not afraid anymore. But healing is not some bright, victorious moment. It is slow, quiet. You learn how to make peace with the scars, even if they still ache some nights. Some mornings I would wake up and forget that I was no longer married, and for half a second, I would brace for a cold remark or a heavy silence at the breakfast table. Then I would remember I was alone and safe. The silence now was my own, peaceful, not weaponized. I started to write again, just little things, letters to myself, memories I needed to sort through, things I had never said out loud, about the times Daniel made me feel small in front of friends, or how he used to joke about me being ungrateful, how he stopped touching me like I mattered long before he stopped pretending to love me. Writing helped me remember the version of myself he tried to erase. I reconnected with a few old friends. Some reached out after the court case. Others had always suspected. Something was wrong, but did not know how to ask. I forgave the ones who had believed his lies, not because they deserved it, but because I needed to move forward without bitterness. One afternoon, I ran into Daniel's cousin at the grocery store. She looked surprised to see me. Then she leaned in and whispered, "He told everyone you would fall apart without him." I smiled. "Tell him I bought a house." The truth is, Daniel never really understood the strength of silence. He only knew how to use it as a weapon, to control, to punish. But I learned how to use it as a shield, as a way to listen, to plan, to rise. I never wanted revenge. Not really. I wanted truth. I wanted to be heard, to be seen, to be believed. And now, I am owning the house was never about real estate. It was about reclaiming what he tried to take. My place in the world. My voice. My worth. He said I would be nothing without him, that I would die without him. But I am alive in a way I never was with him. And he is exactly where he belongs. Them in the past. If you are watching this and you have ever felt like you were disappearing inside your own life, I want you to know something. You are not crazy. You are not too sensitive. You are not overreacting. When someone tries to erase your voice, your worth, your presence, that is not love. That is control. And you deserve more than that. You deserve a life where your silence is sacred, not suffocating, where your home feels like peace, not punishment, where your name is yours again. So I will ask you, have you ever felt powerless like this? Drop a 1 if you know what that silence feels like. Drop a 2 if you are still in it, trying to find your way out. And drop your city or country. I read every word. I see you because no matter where you are right now, I promise you, you are not alone. And you will rise just like I did. Quietly, powerfully, fully, even if it takes time. Even if no one claps when you win, you will still win. because healing is the most beautiful kind of revenge, and you are worth every step of it.